So, imagine a world where the drawings you put on a blackboard with chalk can move. And then, imagine a world where those chalk drawings can come alive and take over the world, consuming people, turning them into chalk monsters. That's the book Brandon Sanderson has written for us today, and that's the book we're talking about, The Rithmatist. Welcome to the 800's.
That's right. Welcome to this week's episode of the 800's. I am your co-host Alex, and joining me today is usually our tech man Alan, who is doubling as my co-host. Adam is out celebrating with his family today. We wish him and his wife and family the very best. But for now, let's get into our plugs and sponsors.
Yeah. All right. So, first off, if you are joining us on YouTube, don't forget to leave comments about the questions we talk about. And if you want to join us in our reading escapades, why not do it through audiobook? Audiobook is a great way for you to multitask and consume a lot of books. I've actually listened to and read the most books I've ever read during a year, this year, just because of Audible. Audible is a fantastic platform. They've got just a, a ton of books on there, and you should go check it out. And if you go to the sorry, if you go to dmstable.com/audible, you'll help the show out and you'll get yourself 2 books free and a 30-day trial to probably the best audiobook platform there is out there. So go check out Audible. And if you joined us at the start, you were listening to Fearless First by Incompetech. You can check Incompetech out at incompetech.filmmusic.io. Also, our Patreon supporters, they are the ones that vote for these books. So the community suggests the books, our Patreon supporters vote for the books. It only takes $2 to vote. Our current vote is out there, and it ends at 9:15.
All right. This week on the 800s, we'll be discussing The Rithmatist by the ever prolific Brandon Sanderson. The United Isles of America are beset by an ever present scourge, the Chalklings. The only hope of holding them at bay are the Rithmatists. Magicians wield the power of chalk against chalk. The only hope. They are trained at schools like Armedius alongside normal students like our hero, Joel, who, though not a arithmetist, is obsessed with the lines and circles that make up the art. Along and his obsession will draw him into a grand mystery where the lines he knows so well begin to blur.
Oh, so what we do here on the 800s, if you haven't joined us before, is we are a Twitch book club. What we do is we propose a question, we talk about that question, and then we go to chat and see what chat has to say about it. And it's just kind of this back and forth. You in chat can also propose questions for us to talk about, so please throw something out there.
All right, and as always, just a quick reminder that this is not intended to be a kids show. We'll try not to rely too heavily on swearing or anything like that, but we're just trying to build a fun and supportive community here over at Dean's Table in the 800s. So please, in keeping with that, just be nice or fuck off.
I, I love that. I absolutely love it. So,
Man,
what's up?
go ahead.
Oh, all right. So, first off, I want to thank Elpac Phantom. He suggested this book. He's been actually trying to get me to read it for a very long time. And so, thank you for the suggestion.
Yes, thank you, LPAC Phantom.
So why don't we kick it off with first impressions? What were your first impressions on this guy?
I went into this not knowing, like I didn't even read any previews for it whatsoever, so I didn't even know that this was like a young adult novel, but I very much got that vibe from the beginning.
Hmm.
But for a young adult novel, there are certain elements of it that were so expertly done that it felt like just enough of a challenge in some areas, in particular with like the magic system.
Hmm.
And so there was enough like a challenging my adult brain that I just got to have fun with it for most of it, but I also got a little bit of that challenge in there, which was really kind of fun to read about. And I just really enjoyed that aspect of it. And uh, it was, I have to say, having the mystery element in there too made it like super compelling. I'm like, I want to know the next thing.
Yeah.
So it was a very easy and a very quick read. I got through it in one day and ended up having to reread to make sure I didn't forget everything by the time this rolled around. So what about you, Alan?
Yeah, I found this book exceptionally easy to read, mainly because of the target audience, which was actually kind of nice. We've been doing this kind of ebb and flow of kind of like easier book, a little more mind crunching book, and it's nice. I would certainly call this almost like a vacation book where like you can crush this guy pretty quickly. I'm a slow reader. I was able to crush it in about 3 days. It's only 350 pages or something like that, so
Hmm.
it really isn't that long. But yeah, I would echo what you're saying. Brandon Sanderson brought his depth of magic to young adults, and I think that was super exhilarating for me, mainly because I know that there's young adults out there who haven't quite experienced this book yet, anyways, that will eventually happen upon this book and will be blown away by the amount of depth that can be brought into fantasy. Um, that was really cool for me. Brandon is like the master class writer when it comes to complicated magic systems. Like and and he does an excellent job in teaching you those complicated magic systems, but also not telling you enough about them so that they feel magical, right? And so he straddles that line of like science and magic by not telling you everything about that magic and keeping it kind of fantasy like. So I really enjoyed that aspect as well.
All right, so why don't we get into some like our first questions? And I have one, and I'll post into the chat. So, what are your thoughts on the world Brandon Sanderson created for the Rithmatist?
Mm.
Like specifically the fact that it is a kind of
Alt Earth.
reimagining of our own, yeah, alt Earth,
Yeah.
but with some very true to our own history parts of it.
Yeah, yeah. So I loved it. I loved the alt Earth concept. I loved the idea of like we could have the United States be broken into islands. I loved the idea of like the Asian nations taking over Europe and kind of reversing what happened with England, kind of I wouldn't say conquering, but they conquered a lot of countries and area. So it was really cool to see that reverse, and then I loved it because Brandon took so much attention to detail for just that part of world building, right? So, like, he talked about spaghetti having an Asian flair, which is exactly the kind of stuff that would happen when another, like, what do you call it? Culture, when another culture invades and takes over a another culture. And so you get this Asian flair that blends into this fusion with Italian, and I just thought that was such a great like little tidbit of attention that he gave.
No, I absolutely agree. I really love that what he did is he created a world that was just unique enough to be entirely his own, and it was a true masterclass in how to take an altered history and make it your own while just adjusting little things that
Mm-hmm.
can make it so unique. Like you said, that kind of reverse imperialism where it was
Mm-hmm.
from the east instead of the west. The fact that the Americas are in United States, like 60 United Isles, and they
Mm-hmm.
mostly have names that are vaguely reminiscent of what we would understand them. So we can build the world in our head very easily, but he gets to make it his own at the same time. And the fact that he managed to do that in so few pages is just impressive,
I
honestly.
I I certainly agree, and it feels like I think how he did that, or at least this is how it feels to me, is I think he asked himself small questions about Earth, like he did almost like what Marvel did with the What If series. He said, what if England didn't take over, didn't do the imperialism? What if the Asian countries did? Or what if the United States were actually just a bunch of islands? And that allowed him to fill those questions in and give us this sense of a completely different world, like you were talking about. And I honestly was extraordinarily impressed. It wasn't at all what I had expected to see. I know, when the book was suggested to me, I was told that it was a alt Earth concept, but never really got into what that meant. And so I almost thought of it as like when I originally picked the book up, I was thinking like we were getting into historical fiction, right? Where you are just slightly adjacent, but this is like different universe, a reimagining, which was just awesome. I really loved it.
Yeah, and I like that it wasn't just limited to like food, culture, and geography, but like the technology too is
Yeah.
just adjacent enough. We're basically looking at something that's steampunk, only instead of steam, it's powered by chalk
Yeah.
and chalk and springs,
Yes.
which is, again, just enough of a little twist to make it unique. It fits within his magic system.
Yep.
And to your point about like taking the what ifs, what I wonder is how much of that what if was derived from I want these chalkling figures to originate from the Americas, and it kind of makes sense that they would too, because chalk drawings and drawing I forget what the lines are called in South America, where they have like these giant pictures uh like built into the ground.
In our real South America, right?
uh,
Yeah, I know what you're talking
what
about. In our real South America, correct?
Yeah, South America. So I'm
Yeah.
wondering how much like that the Nazca lines. That's the one. They're in Peru, and it's basically
Mhm.
from space. You can see
Mhm.
like
The
these
pictures.
images of what effective pictures of like ants. There's a hummingbird,
Mhm.
and there's I think there's an ant eater in there somewhere as well. Like they're and like when I first heard about the chalklings and people drawing them, I more or less imagined, and when I found out they were from primarily South America, that's the first thing I imagined was like those, but not the size of an entire field.
Right. Yeah.
you know, but so it was like he took something like that, shrunk it down, and turned it into this whole world-altering scenario. And I'm wondering if it started there, and it's like, how would this work if like this half of the world developed differently? Like was it multiple points, or was it a singular point that drew from? And it's really fun
Right.
to think about. And
Mhm.
that's before we even get into the story,
Right.
which I think we should probably start doing at this point.
All right. All right. We'll come back to the Springworks though, because that was some cool stuff. Okay.
Oh yeah.
What do you got for me? Let's see.
Well, why don't you pose this next
Okay.
question
Okay.
there, Alan?
So, uh,
sorry to put you on the
I
spot.
know,
Like
I
I
know what.
Well, because my big thing that I wanted to
Oh,
talk
okay,
about was like, what did you think of this blend of magic and mystery?
okay, okay. Yeah, I got a question queued up after this. So, um,
Okay.
what did I think of the magic mystery? I loved it. I loved it. We've been kind of on a mystery kick almost. You know, we just came off of Agatha's book. Um, I enjoyed it. I was jumping around a little bit on who done it. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and I enjoyed this like almost Jack the Ripper meets Harry Potter vibe, right? Like you've got
Mm-hmm.
this murder mystery or or murder mystery that happens and you throw magic into the mix. And that was just I thought that was really cool. What did you think about it?
I thought it was a really compelling way to use magic. Like you said, we've been on a bit of a mystery kick
Mhm.
with not just Agatha Christie, but Truly Devious, and then even Artemis Fowl kind of had. It wasn't so much a mystery as it was kind of like a Die Hard meets magic, you know. And it's
Mhm.
kind of fun to see magic used in more than just the high fantasy type of way. You know, we get
Mhm.
another little element to it that lets us experience it in a different way. And I found it fun. It keeps the story moving,
Mhm.
and it allows you to preoccupy yourself with more than just how does the magic work.
Yeah.
And I because I think that's a rabbit hole that a lot of fantasy novels suck me into,
Mhm.
is like how does the magic work, and then I can ignore other parts of it, but the mystery part forces you to focus on other elements, which I really honestly appreciated, especially for such a short book,
I think it
because
was
that could have easily been consumed by the magic system.
oh yeah. I think it was super necessary, right? Like you could have had this 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 murderer on the loose uh backstory that's happening, and it's affecting the school, but turning that into a mystery aspect was a really smart move on Brandon's part, because this book could have gotten exceptionally dry just having that kind of like a landscape of a murder that's happening to Rithmatist.
Mm-hmm.
But having that whole like, okay, the main character is a part of that like investigation was it was critical. It was very
Mm-hmm.
critical, because I mean, I'm gonna throw this out there, but I really don't know that Joel is a super deep character, and so I think it was really critical for him as a character to be put into this investigation, because even though he is able to like understand Rithmatis, uh, or Rithmatics, and to a scholarly degree, the guy's got a rag to no riches story, and it really wasn't super compelling until it started like introducing this whole like murder mystery aspect.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it was certainly required.
I actually am glad that you brought that up. That it does feel like a very one-dimensional character, at least in the
Hmm.
beginning, and the
Right.
mystery kind of puts him. It forces him into situations in a rather organic way that force character development, that
Exactly.
make him a little more compelling. I still don't think he's the most compelling main character
Hmm.
ever, but it definitely it went from there is a development of I went from just seeing him as a vessel for the story as an
Hmm.
actual character that I wanted to see grow and change
Yeah.
and had some investment in.
Yeah.
Again, not the greatest character I've ever seen written, but Brandon Sanderson did a good job of taking a character I couldn't have given two shits about and making me give at least one.
Yeah. Yeah. I think I think what I enjoyed out of this book was watching Joel grow, right?
Hmm.
Like in the end, Joel, yeah, he's a kid, right? So he doesn't have a ton of depth. He
Hmm.
has a little bit of a backstory, but there isn't a ton of depth to him. But watching him grow, I think, was the what made him a a good main character in this book, right?
Hmm. Yeah.
So yeah. All right, I got a question for you. So,
Lay it on me there.
so this is a hard-hitting one. Why do you think this
Okay.
why do you think this book was not as prevalent as its peers at its time?
I'm actually not entirely certain when it was released. Was that like
2013.
2013?
Yep.
So that would have been right around the time of like the ends of the Twilight series type of.
Yep. It would be end of Harry Potter movies. The last Harry Potter book came out in like I think 2008. So the movies were just getting close to wrapping
Okay.
up, if not already wrapped up. Um, Twilight was in its, I think, in a pretty good swing. I believe they were wrapping up the movies at that time too.
And I
So
think the Hunger Games was the other one out
yeah,
there at that time.
yep. I think Hunger Games was the big one, right about that time.
Well, for one, I think part of it is when people who like fantasy, when they see Brandon Sanderson, I think they might have been scared away by the name because they think, 1,000-page novels like
Mm-hmm.
Way of Kings. So that might have been some bad branding there. But the other thing is this a lot of those other ones have a focus around the romance and the teenage angst, and while there is a minor amount of that in there in this
Mm-hmm.
one, it is pretty well a fantasy story that happens to center around teenagers. It has some of those slightly easier to read elements, and there is some romance and tension there, but it's pretty minimal.
Mm-hmm.
And it focuses a lot around the world building and the magic system, which is what Brandon Sanderson is like arguably one of the best ever to write
Yeah.
at doing. And I don't think at that time that was as popular as it is today.
Mm-hmm.
So I do agree that it does have. I think there is a growing audience for this type of book where you, especially for people who don't want the overly angsty, overly romantic
Right.
books that typically come with YA fantasy.
Mm-hmm.
I think there is a very big market for this to potentially take off if it were remarketed, but that's up to the publishers to do that whether or not they want
Mm-hmm.
to. But if you really want to experience like a light introduction to what building a fantasy world and magic system are really about, this is a great book to do that with.
Yeah.
Uh, you know, it especially if you like ones that blend genres.
Mm-hmm.
You know, because I mean, it's hard in that era to beat out the Harry Potter series when it comes to building like a magical world.
Mm-hmm.
With like that good balance of other stuff with the fantasy, but
Well, and I think
that's also a huge investment.
yeah,
And
I
this
I
is a good intro one.
I think that the thing Harry Potter had going for it was first to market. I really think that Harry Potter was kind of the first to market for this sort of genre, right?
Yeah.
And at least it's the first one to like go viral, and so I don't know. I just feel like this book didn't quite get its due. And you can certainly tell that it didn't because Brandon's not really rushing to finish it. I actually, when I finished this book, I scoured his blogs and stuff like that, and I found the state of Sanderson for 2020. So the end of 2020, he writes a state of Sanderson, where his books are at, what he's shooting for 2021, and he put in there that it's not being worked on, and he said it's not going to be worked on until at least after the the next Storm King's book, or Stormlight book, uh, and and he might write it in between Mistborn and something else. and as like a just kind of a side project, and I was really disappointed by that because I want to see more of this world. I found it very intriguing. I loved the rule set about it, and I loved the character dynamics. Right? I
Mm-hmm.
think I think Joel has a lot of room to grow, and that is what makes it compelling for me to want to know more about Joel's story.
Yeah, and that can be like one of those things that I think we take for granted when we have in our lives an author that's as prolific
Mm-hmm.
as Brandon Sanderson is, and not just prolific, but a genius.
Yeah.
I would put him at the equivalent of like I'd say the previous generation's closest one would be like Stephen King. Granted,
Yes.
different genres,
Yep.
but they're both hyper prolific. They produce great works. Some of them maybe not as great as others, but
Mm-hmm.
you know, but there's always going to be that market, and we just have to wait for them to get to what they want to
Yes.
write.
Yep.
And
Exactly.
and that is their luxury, being as great as they are, because you know, in the meantime, I suppose there's fanfic, man.
Yeah. Yeah.
You can
Yep. Yep.
uh
Yeah. I just I I get that, I just was kind of bummed that like this wasn't one that I heard move through, high schools and middle schools. I really felt like this one could have been like near the level of Harry Potter. And maybe it's just because of Harry Potter's filled that void already. Um
mhm,
but like it really felt like for me I had the same experience reading this book as when I first read the Harry Potter book. It was just like it was like my mind was open to this new magical world, right? Where like
mhm.
I've read the Stormlight archives, and he does this with a lot of his books, but with it being inside of YA, it had that new kind of feeling. So I was disappointed
Mhm.
about it.
Well,
But that's okay. That's
Well,
all right.
the other thing I think that I got the feeling of, because I didn't quite get the Harry Potter feeling, but I
Okay.
think the reason I got that is something that you mentioned that Brandon Sanderson said himself, is that it's a side project for him.
Right.
When you look at like these other blockbusters, those were the sole projects for those people
Mhm.
at that time. That
Mhm.
is what they were focused on. And I think you can kind of feel that in the story, but especially in the characters. I
Really.
think Joel might have been that type of character where he was not very well fleshed out, but Brandon Sanderson wanted to explore the world. So that's how it
Oh.
started. And then he realized, oh, I've got to give this character some depth along the way. And that's where it goes. At least that's how it kind of felt to me. I felt
Okay.
like Joel was kind of just along for the ride up to a certain point, and then he picks up. And what that says to me is a slight disinterest in that character from the beginning
Mhm.
until a certain point. And I wonder how much of that plays in. Like, I don't want to speak for Brandon Sanderson himself, but like, I just, that's the kind of feeling I got out of it. So that might be another reason why I might not have done as well. Is it's hard for, you know, the more I think the more an author cares about their characters, like truly cares about them,
Mhm.
the more likely they are to be brought to life.
Mhm.
And Brandon Sanderson's great at caring about the magic systems in the world, but like what really sets it over the top is like when he has characters that you just really love. And there were
Mhm.
none of the main characters or anything that I truly loved. I think my
Really.
favorite, well, I mean, I think my favorite character out of all of them was probably Professor Fitch or Principal York.
Okay.
And they're like kind of background characters. Like, um, you know, because I liked that there was a professor that like actually cared about teaching, was flawed but had something excellent about them,
Mhm.
and Thomas York is a principal who actually, you know, gives a damn.
Mhm.
You know, like not your stereotypical like rule thumper, like
Yeah.
type of principal. So it was a little nice to see those archetypes kind of skirted a little bit,
Mhm.
but otherwise, like while the characters were compelling and nice, there were none that I truly deeply connected with. Like
Okay.
I connected with parts about Joel, like the curiosity bit in
Yeah.
him. Like that's me all the way. Like just learning about stuff for the sake of learning about it, even
Mhm.
though I have nothing to do with the world in which those things revolve around. Um, but yeah, there was no particular character that I was just like I truly like connect with or adore or love this character. Like
Mm.
that just didn't happen for me.
So
I mean, like where what so were
was
there in
York your
let
favorite, would you say?
I would
If you
I
had
would
to
say Fitch
choose.
is like my if I had to choose probably Fitch just
Okay.
because he appears slightly more and he plays a big hand in developing the two main or two protagonists,
Okay.
Joel and Melody.
Mhm.
Like I like that guiding figure that he played, and he was there a lot more than York was. York was kind of he was like tertiary, not even secondary.
Yeah. I almost feel
Um,
like York is almost the, I don't want to say Deus ex machina, the god solving the problem, but York seemed to come in at certain points when the when the characters needed to be like almost unlocked, like to move forward a little more, right? And I don't know. I totally see that. I think like in my mind, I see Fitch, Melody, and Joel as like one character in total. And I it's I don't want to cop out. I think that out of all of the characters in the book, I really enjoyed I actually really enjoyed the his name escapes me. The grumpy one that got like framed.
hold on. I know this one. Is that Exton Pratt? I
Yes.
believe.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Uh
I mean,
it,
he was fun to read.
yeah, I
Sure.
well, I enjoyed that character mainly because he was there as like he was kind of there almost as like the guy that was supposed to be the bad guy, right? And turn out not to be. And though his character wasn't like crazily fleshed out, I think his character had some really good background that uh well, I don't know, it somehow I connect with it. It was like I felt something for his failures, but the fact that he came back to work at the school he failed from, that was just like, I don't know. I thought that was really cool. I thought that was kind of noble, and what he did for Joel, trying to protect him from the Chalklings and stuff like that. Like, I like that character. He was a good character.
Well, I would agree that he's a good character, but I think it's kind of a fundamental flaw in getting a book to be really appreciated by a broad spectrum of people if you can't get them to invest in one of your main
Oh,
characters.
sure,
like
sure,
like really invest in them, and I think that's where this book probably falls a bit short.
yeah,
But before we go too deep into this, I want to talk a bit more about like the actual story. So what were some of your favorite parts about like the actual like storyline that Joel goes through? Like let's maybe focus on like just the mystery part.
okay, okay. I
What were
think
your favorite parts of the mystery?
my favorite part of the mystery would be like, where, hmm, I think it's where Joel starts applying his knowledge. He was kind of doing the like I know Rithmatics, and he was kind of, I don't know. It was at that point when he went over to, was it West Virginia, or no, it's South,
South Carolina or
no, West Carolina
oh
or
East
something.
it was East
Yeah,
Carolina.
yeah, yeah. It's such different names. Um, but yeah, when
That is one problem with it being that close is
yeah, when
conflation.
when he went over there, it became like you don't just know Rithmatics, but you know Rithmatics. Like he
Hmm.
got to apply his knowledge and impress us as readers in his detail and eye for Rithmatics. So that was my favorite part. How about you?
Yeah, there's some really good payoff there, but I think my favorite part was when he finally opens up his dad's workshop
Ooh,
and finds the
totally forgot
symbol.
about that.
Like that was my favorite
Yeah.
for on multiple levels. One, there's emotional payoff there.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's one of the few like truly emotional payoff points in the book is like how hard that must have been to open that up after having it
Oh
closed for so
yeah.
many years.
Well, and his
Like
mom's
8 years of his
reaction.
life or something like that.
Yeah, and then his mom's
And
reaction. Oh, that was
oh,
so cool.
absolutely. That was and the fact that she took it as well as she did,
Yeah.
that was awesome. So the emotional payoff in that scene is fantastic for me. It was one of my favorite
Mm-hmm.
parts in the whole book, really. And then like you said, it's that next level of him taking this application and turning it into theory, so like taking that even next step,
Mm-hmm.
um, and finding out how much his father had really accomplished. Learning about that was really fun, and at the same time we get this new mystery of like, oh, so we know that somebody knew about this, not only so but we still need to figure out what does it do, and not only what does it do but where does it come from,
Mm-hmm.
like how uh
Mm-hmm.
like honestly that's something I still want to know is like what was it that allowed his Joel's father to actually put that together, and like that symbol,
Mm-hmm.
like it, especially once we find out what it does,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
and so it opens up that next level of the mystery. And the other thing, and this is just a personal thing for me,
Mm-hmm.
I that happens to me so often. It's like I remember it, I can't, it's at the tip of my tongue, I can't remember what it was, and it feels super important, and then just like days later at some random mention you're just like, aha, I've got it, and then you just like shut up, you go find where you found it, like, and you're just
Mm-hmm.
like, vindication, I
Yeah.
found it. Like, and it had that sort of payoff too. So that was my favorite part of the actual mystery.
Oh, nice.
But as far as like how the mystery played out, like did you have any theories going through it or?
Oh, a ton. Okay, so I had um my first theory was that the Nalazar was a Snape character, so he was going to end up being the good guy. Um, and that it was my favorite character, um, as the bad guy. Right? He kept heavy-handed hinting at it. Right? He had a cane, he had a bowler. I picked up on that like right away, and I was like, oh, this guy, this is the guy. And I even remember telling my wife like, as soon as they introduced that character, I was like, well, frickin' YA novels, I know who the bad guy is, and now I just gotta wait, 200 pages to know I'm right. And I was wrong. Uh, so so it was, yeah. I think the twist and turn there, and oh gosh, the reveal. I loved the scene. If I had to choose a favorite scene out of the entire book, right? Uh, it would be the fight scene in the hallway. I I loved that. Okay, I take that back. The fight scene in the hallway and the Rithmatics duel at the end. But the fight scene in the hallway was just absolutely amazing when they find out the that the cop was actually a, what did they call it? It was a forgotten, I think. Um that was what it was called, right? Forgotten. Um and he had this like shadow about him. I was like,
Mhm.
"What?" That was awesome, and it just like it expanded the world even further.
Mhm.
So, yeah.
See, I had a kind of similar journey, although I had different people in mind. Like when Nalzar got put out there, I'm like, it's a YA novel. The one that you love to hate actually is one of two things. Either they're a red herring or they're the guy.
Yeah,
And I'm just like, I like to hate this guy too much. And it feels like the type of guy, like I actually predicted this, that I was like, he feels like the guy that you love to hate so much that you want to dismiss him as the evil guy, but he's actually the evil
yeah,
guy. But he's going to somehow manipulate it to look like Joel is a jerk for accusing him, which
yeah,
happens multiple times throughout the book. But I did like the twist at the end where he finds a patsy by somehow infecting Inspector Harding, which I'm curious as to, like, they kind of explain it that
mm,
Harding had been like that since Nebraska.
yeah, yep. So
But
him,
I'm curious about this, like, like you said, that next level of these forgotten that
mhm,
seems to have intelligent, like extreme intelligence. And I waffled a little bit thinking, oh, it's Nalazar, and with that theory, but I waffled when they had that description of Harding. He's like, he put on his bowler hat and grabbed his cane and ducked out of the room or
yeah,
whatever. And I was like, oh, so it is him. Okay, well that kind of makes sense because I figured it was somebody really close to the project.
yeah,
Um,
yep.
I never really did pick up on Exton as being
Oh
one of
no.
those characters. Like it just never crossed my mind. So good on you for like even picking up that he might be thrown under the bus. I just wasn't thinking about that. But
I felt like he laid it on thick, but like not so thick that I suspected it. You know what I mean? Like it was a trick. I think he laid it on like YA amount of thick for me to like take the hook, you know. But I
yeah,
what I really appreciated about Nelazar is that he was the bad guy for the most of the book, right? You wanted to hate this guy. You wanted him to be the guy. And then right near the end in that hallway fight scene, he's the good guy. And then all of a sudden at the end, he is the big bad guy. He is the guy. And I thought that was really clever of Brandon to do.
yeah.
Because he kind of takes your expectations and flips them twice. And that was clever.
Sorry, had
It's
a
okay.
wasp on my desk there.
Ooh.
That was not going to fly away and become a problem. So you'll
Uh,
need to kind of do a little cleanup here. I don't have any tissue, but okay. Anyway, back to the book.
yeah. So
Um,
so I've got a question for you.
mhm.
Uh so tell me about your thoughts of how the Rithmatics and the Springworks kind of clash. Like what were your thoughts on that? What were your feelings on the two, like, because it was almost like two magic systems, right? They had super advanced like computer Springworks, and then they had this chalkling concept. So what are your thoughts on how those interacted?
I didn't see them as being entirely separate, especially towards the end. Once we learned a little more of the theory of how this stuff works and
Hmm.
and how the chalklings react to clocks, I saw it as effectively an order versus chaos thing. The chalklings are chaos, representative
Hmm.
chaos, and when humans put an order to it, it's something that they uh,
Shy away from.
they shy away from. So basically, this human made order of Springworks that's bringing order to physics, bringing order to time,
Hmm.
and bringing order to space. In particular, when you think gearworks are effectively perfect circles with
Hmm.
lines through them at perfect angles.
Hmm.
Like that's the only way that they work. And when you are bringing order to chaos, apparently it freaks them out, especially when we find out what wild chalklings look like, that they're these scribbles and they
Hmm.
look really weird. And they're like, all of that screams chaos to me, and putting an order to it that they don't understand. Cause just like what Nalazar, the big bad, says at the very end, we don't understand it, but the more you understand something, the less you fear it.
Right.
And so effectively the human's ability to bring so it felt like an order versus chaos, fear versus fear-based
Hmm.
attack, and that's why they clash. I don't know that they're separate magic systems so much as separate forces within the same world.
Sure.
You
I
know?
was kind of thinking like magic system as like it's it's like separate separate pages of physics, right? Like
Yeah,
like because in this world, right, chalklings are some form of physics, and the Springworks technology is like a hyper advanced version of springs in computing. And yeah, I thought it was really interesting to see the clash and then see how the clash affects the culture, right? Like
yeah.
like I'm I was super surprised during the inception uh, ceremony of the chalkling being in there, right? The chalkling coming out and probably going inside of Joel, you know, but having that spring that watch that he had kind of screwed his chances, right? And I thought, or was it a coin? It was their coins had like clocks inside of them or whatever, or
Hmm.
springs inside of them. So like I was trying to think of like how did the original, like, what was he, King George? How did he use his pocket watch in order to like put a chalkling inside of him? You know what I mean? And then from there, the church adopts this like this clockwork, springwork type worship, I guess. You know, they had those like themes and stuff inside of their places of worship. So
Hmm. Yeah, it's also interesting to think about. It makes me wonder if even among the Chalklings there are different factions,
hmm.
and the way they interact with the world is different. Like one may represent chaos, and the other one actually finds the order of a clock appealing in some way. Like it
Oh,
makes sense to them.
ooh,
Like
hmm,
which is why some work with humans and some don't.
hmm.
You know, like it makes me wonder. Like not
Why
only
would it shy away from Joel though in the Inception booth?
that I don't know. I really genuinely don't. And that is probably for me the biggest remaining question and
Yeah.
my like source of theories moving forward.
Hmm.
I have a theory that there are more than just the two factions.
Ah, okay.
And Joel is most compatible with a different faction, or Joel
In
needs to
Arizona.
find, yeah.
Yeah.
And I think they're gonna well
Well, it's like
uh
Nara
it
era or something like that. Zona era or something.
yeah, it's Zona area.
Yeah.
Like it's like Area 51 in Arizona. Like but like considering the fact that the next book is called the
It's like,
Aztlantean,
yep, there you go.
which is basically like Aztec
And
and
Atlantean.
Atlantean mixed together, makes me think that there is this whole culture that either birthed or was founded by the Chalklings,
Hmm.
based in that area. And there's a mystery as to like I think this tower is going to lead somewhere. To
Yeah. It
my guess
has
is
to.
to another dimension.
Oh. Oh, interesting.
Possibly, maybe not within the Cosmere. I don't think so
No.
because
No,
this
this
is
book
I.
is outside of Cosmere.
Yeah, I remember. Sorry, I remember looking that up. I
Hmm.
digress on that point. I thought that for a second before I looked it up, and I forgot for a moment. But yeah, so like, there's a lot of theories there as to what it could be.
Hmm.
The only other thing I can think of is that it wasn't the right time.
Ooh, oh,
Uh, be,
interesting. Like he was
like it needed to be, because we find out that the scribbles were made from Rithmatists. Maybe you need to be a Rithmatist to be made into one of those, but there needs to be somebody who is as good as Joel who isn't actually a Rithmatist.
sure. Yeah.
So there's somebody who can always learn, teach, and fight at some point against
Oh, I
this.
see what you're saying. Ah. Yeah.
Like, I wonder if that was like, because what did they call those things? Shadow something,
Yeah.
shadow breakers, or
Yeah, something like that. Yeah. I
Um, yeah, those I think those ones have plans in store for Joel. Like
oh yeah.
I don't know that he'll ever get Rithmatist powers, but they have big plans for him.
Yeah. Yeah. I I really enjoyed that that shock factor and
Mhm,
the the secret that all Rithmatists hold that they don't talk about. I feel
mhm.
like is almost clearly that they hold a chuckling inside of them,
Oh, absolutely. I would
that they are
put money down.
possessed or whatever.
Hmm.
I think that was a really really cool aha moment. I felt robbed that Joel didn't become a Rithmatist. Um, I was just I was like, man, you built it up, and I kind of felt it coming. He really built it up, and I was like, he ain't gonna do it. Like I feel like this character would be too much of a what is it, a Mary Sue or whatever, where there's no flaws. I would feel like Joel would become too much of that if he were to attain Rithmatist status. And so I think you're right. I think he's got some other story entailed for him that will essentially be the teach Rithmatists how to Rithmatics, right? I guess,
Yeah,
or discover things that even the Chalklings don't understand. So
yeah. I totally agree, and I felt that same frustration slash like I was like I knew it because it was too good to be true that he was getting that second chance, and you kind of felt for him, but at the
yeah,
end they give you that hope, and maybe like it feels like I'm feeling the same thing that Joel did. He's like, oh, there's still some hope that maybe there's another way for me to become a arithmetist.
right.
It's like
Oh,
it reminds
honey.
me of something. Speaking of oh honey, it reminds me of something from How I Met Your Mother.
Okay.
The like how people get kept on the hook.
Oh yeah.
He's like, we can never be together. Oh, sorry, we can't be together right now.
Yeah.
It just felt
Mhm.
like I'm like, okay, I'm on the hook, just like
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah.
it was so bad that I did the same thing. As soon as it was over, I start looking. It was like, oh, when's the second book coming out? And
Yeah.
then when it didn't say immediately, I was like, I'm not even gonna look for a date.
Yeah.
So thank you for ruining that ignorance for me.
Sorry.
But
I I was really really hooked uh during the melee. I that was
yes,
the coolest effing moment ever. Him being allowed to be out there, it not being against the rules, everybody thinking it's against the rules, and then him and it's Melody, right?
yeah.
Yeah, him and Melody just winning. It was just it was so cool. That was the coolest thing ever. And Melody's can we talk about Melody's part of the story and kind of
Yeah.
her magic? I really think that Melody needs some fan service here.
Oh no, I was. If you weren't gonna bring it up, that was gonna be my next topic. I honestly like of the two main characters. I actually kind of like, despite the fact that I found her annoying at times,
Mhm.
liked her better than Joel because at least she wasn't completely one dimensional. Um, uh, but like she also brought out like forced us to look at the other aspect of arithmetism, which is the chalklings themselves and how they work, and there's more questions there than answers.
I have something. I have something.
Go ahead,
You
lay it on me.
you're us talking about it makes me think that I know something about Melody now. Okay, so Melody's so good at chalklings, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think it's because she's super chaotic.
That might be very
Right?
true. Holy crap.
You just said they are some sort of embodiment of chaos, right? And they love chaos, and they shy away from order, especially order that is man-made, right?
Hmm.
And Melody, you couldn't tell which way Melody was going, right? You couldn't. I personally couldn't tell if she was joking some of the times or if she wasn't joking, and like she was just like all over the place. And I'm starting to think that that is why she attunes so well to her chalklings.
Well, it's hard. That could very well be, especially because she's so good at the chalking specifically.
Mm-hmm.
Um, One of the things I also wonder about that, just as an extension of that, is what gives these things power. They mention intention, but I wonder how much of it is emotion, and emotion tends to be fairly chaotic. Although,
Mm-hmm.
emotion, I wonder if there's a difference. Like, if emotion helps chalklings, but intention, which requires focus, helps with
Yes.
the rhythmatic lines. So I'm wondering how much of that stuff comes into play, and like the fact that you can even ask these questions while still understanding how the fundamentals work.
Yes.
That's one of my favorite parts about this magic system
Yeah.
that Brandon Sanderson created. And before we get too far afield away from uh, too far afield, I want to refocus back on Melody,
Okay.
because I think she in this book represents something that I think is a little, it's a little tough for me to read sometimes in a lot of these fantasy books that choose to create an alternate Earth using a similar history, and they put it in a part of history that allows them to kind of just dismiss female characters,
Mm-hmm.
and the female characters are only strong because they don't adhere to the societal guidelines rather than just being strong on their own volition.
Oh,
And
yeah.
um that's something I don't typically care for,
Mm-hmm.
but at the same time it makes me root for the character because I want them to like if they're going to be the character that subverts the societal norms, I want them to really fuck shit up.
Yeah.
you know, and so like while it annoys me that that Brandon Sanderson kind of played into that, because this is supposed to be effectively turn of the 20th century,
Mm-hmm.
roughly
Yeah.
equivalent.
Early 1900s, right?
Yeah, early 1900s, late 1800s. Yeah,
Yeah.
so right at the turn of the 20th century. Um, and like, yeah, I get that you want things to be fairly similar, and that's right about the time of like women's suffrage and things like that. But like, you wrote a world history that is drastically different. Why did it? Well, I suppose the religions are still the same, so the misogyny is still the same.
Yeah.
But um, I don't know. Sometimes that's a little annoying to me because it allows authors to dismiss certain characters
Mm-hmm.
or to rely on a trope that I don't particularly care for to lend strength
Mm-hmm.
to non male characters. But that being said, within that dynamic of the two main teen characters, I did honestly like reading her stuff better than Joel's for the most part.
Okay.
Joel felt more like, again, this vehicle for the magic system, and it was fun to see the magic system through his eyes.
Mm-hmm.
But beyond that, until we get to the point where he opens up his father's workshop, I think that for me was the turning point where I started to like him. But I always at least found something about Melody compelling, even when she was annoying. She might have been
Mm-hmm.
compelling because she was annoying, but I don't know. Always felt like there was something more, and I did appreciate that aspect of her.
Do you think that um did did Brandon Sanderson subvert your expectations by making Melody that character that could stand on her own even though she is going against the norms, right? You were saying that like you don't like the kind of character that is just strong because they're going against the norms, but you it felt like you were looking for a character that was just strong on their own, right? So
Yeah.
was Melody strong on her own or was she that strong only because?
I think at the very end, I think where she proved to be as strong on her own is when she actually did that favor for Joel and got him that chance. When she took it on
Mm-hmm.
herself to pay him back.
Yeah.
Like that wasn't her subverting the norms. That was her being strong,
Mm-hmm.
realizing there's something that she can do to help somebody who helps her.
Mm-hmm.
Like that has nothing to do with anything else. That's the moment where I think she proved to be a character that I actually liked
I
and that had strength of her own and not just within the magic system either.
Yeah, I think that is the point in the story where I start taking Melody kind of seriously, because I think that she really is the one that started the friendship. Like
Oh,
you know
absolutely.
what I mean? Like they were acquaintances up until that point where like Melody got Joel that chance. And I think
Mhm.
that's where they started to really like bond, and I thought that was just super cool of her.
I think they started to bond a little bit before that, but I think it was at that point that it really became reciprocated and
Yes.
not just begrudging because they're both kind of outcasts,
Yeah.
but like when it was like Joel's actual choice to engage in the friendship because of what she did. And like you said, that was her bringing that about.
Yeah.
And that's another testament to her being a strong character. She found somebody that she wanted in her life, even if it was to rag on him a little bit.
Hmm. I
And she
think.
made it happen. But like, it feels. I'm joking about the ragging on him thing.
Hmm.
Like she does it, but like it just feels like a part of their dynamic by that point.
Yeah. I think that like I think she is kind of the change that is required. Almost like she's certainly a foil to Joel,
Oh,
and
absolutely.
I think Joel is her foil as well, and that's why like they work really well together as characters.
Well, yeah, I think it goes back to what you said about like Joel, Melody, and
Fitch.
Fitch
Yeah.
kind of being like
One
this.
character.
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
a
and
character ecosystem.
yeah, they
Yeah.
are. Yeah, they're this like little character ecosystem. That's a good way of putting it. And I don't think this would be the book it would be without all of them and all of them
Hmm.
working together. So like, and that is a great element to have in a story,
Hmm.
but I think that's also where it kind of falls short of being truly great.
Hmm.
Is
Okay.
that like they need to be together to be a great force within the book, not like within
Oh,
the
sure.
world, not within the world, but like within the story
Hmm.
to be a truly great force and compelling force for me. Like like something that I really connect with. I connect with them as a group, but I find it much harder to connect with them as individuals. In
Yeah.
particular, Joel.
Well, it's because they're symbiotic, right?
Yeah.
All of them are in need of each other. And I think that was really interesting too, because usually like your antagonists or your like your foils tend to be like the bad guy, or like
Mm-hmm.
some evil external force forcing the main characters to grow. But instead in this book, it's really the three characters, the three main characters, pushing each other to change and grow. You know, it Fitch would not have won that duel if it wasn't for the kids,
Mm-hmm.
right? He would have died, and the kids would not have, Melody wouldn't have been able to compete in the melee if she wasn't working with Fitch the whole summer. And Joel wouldn't have been able to
Get
uh
his head out of his ass.
yeah, he would be stuck in this flounder position where he throws away all of his natural gifts and all of the opportunity that's given to him,
Mm-hmm.
and so like it was a really cool symbiotic
Yeah.
relationship to watch.
Yeah. And while I like I said, while I appreciate that aspect, I think the difference between it being a good or a really good book and being a truly great book is like truly great books can have those ecosystems without giving anything up on either on any of the characters within the said ecosystem,
Hmm.
or and I felt like that kind of happened a little bit again, mostly with Joel, but again overall I would say it's a fairly I thought it played out fairly well, and it was you know really satisfying, like you said, to watch how they learned and grew together as characters, like
Yeah,
within that little ecosystem.
yeah.
Um,
So
so,
why
do you
don't
have any other major talking points,
no?
or
I think I would like to know your your predictions on where the series is going. I
okay?
believe it's
So,
supposed to be a two-book series, but lay it on me. What do you think the next book is going to go towards?
okay, the next book is absolutely going to go. Like, I think that at somehow Joel is going to get Melody and Fitch to believe him again about Nalazar, but I think it's going to start off with him kind of working on his own.
Mm-hmm.
Melody is going to try and wrangle him back in, and they find one little bit of evidence that puts just that shadow of a doubt in there, and that evidence is going to lead them to uh, Zona area,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and then into wherever as Atlantis is. Where where they are going to eventually find, well, I think what they're going to find is evidence that there is a whole chalkling society, at least two factions, possibly more, that warred against each other,
Mm-hmm.
and what they have currently stuck in the tower at Nebraska is a faction of chaos that has more or less taken over whatever world or dimension they come from and is trying to bleed into this one,
Mm-hmm.
whereas those other ones were effectively protectors of this world that contained them to the Americas until humans came along. Then they worked together. And I have a feeling that the big bad is effectively like one of the few that not only made it past the line, but into this world.
Mm-hmm.
Like it is, I would think general level, like as opposed to like the captains would be like, I would say probably captain level.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, you know, so I think they're going to find a lot of answers to what actually happened in the past that led to Nebraska being where it is,
Mm-hmm.
and what happened before people got to America. I think that's what a lot of book two is going to be about. If it is going to be a two-book series,
Yeah.
I'd be a little disappointed, but I can understand why Sanderson would do it that way if he's only treating it like a side project, which would really
Right.
stink. But ultimately, if it is a two-book series, YA novels being what they are, Nalzar absolutely gets found out and destroyed,
Yeah.
and they figure out how wherever out west.
Yeah. Okay. I think that uh, I personally believe that the Chalklings are some remnants of a calamity that happened in a past that we've forgotten. So, um, I think that that's why the tower is there, and the tower was at one point some way to contain some sort of chaos. Maybe it was ancient man containing chaos itself, right? But I think that that's where it's kind of going. I I would be very surprised if the book doesn't go almost straight into Nebraska and Melody and Joel are faced with situations where they're in the military and um, and Joel is kind of fighting this whole like I'm not a Rithmatist, but I am capable of commanding Rithmatists
Mm-hmm.
and kind of working through that dynamic. I think that's where it's kind of going to go, and I believe that it's really going to become this race of like figuring out what happened in the past, kind of like what you were saying, and then ending in some sort of battle with Melody and Joel against Nalazar. I wouldn't be surprised if Fitch dies next book.
Uh,
that'd be a perfect heartstring tugger. It would be uh a great like wise man, Spider-Man's uncle style thing.
yeah, now that you say it, I can't unhear it, and I can't imagine it being anything else. Um,
I know. I'm sorry.
so, all right. So, why don't we move ahead
Hmm.
into final impressions?
All right. So, my final impressions. I highly recommend this book. I would super suggest anybody coming across this video in the future go check this book out. This is a book that is super in depth when it comes to a magic system. It is a easy read that you can crank out within, a short period of time, and it is great for the reading level that it's targeting. Um, I would put this at early middle school. It is simple enough concepts. Brandon Sanderson does a great job explaining, and there's pictures which we didn't get to, but there's pictures in the book explaining all of these concepts. I would say sixth grade. The American grading system. I don't know if it's different other places, but yeah, I would say that area.
I would say very similarly. It's a great quick read, great summer read, or something to read with older kids. I would say though that you early middle school might be a bit much unless they are math oriented, because I think having a little idea of geometry is kind of essential to having fun with this and not just being overwhelmed by it.
Sure.
um so like I would say more like late middle school. uh Maybe early if they're math oriented and you think they could get the concepts. I think it's just more fun if you don't have to spend your way working through certain elements of it, unless they again find that specific element fun,
Hmm.
and then you can just mold that into the story and it's another element, which is great. Um, for me, though, it was fun. It was a good, fun, quick read. I wish there was more, and I look forward to the year when there is another one to read
Oh yeah.
because I will absolutely be on it.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, we didn't get into like the actual pictures, and that's something for those of you who watch this. Please comment on YouTube and leave us your questions about it. And if you start leaving questions, we'll do our best to answer within reason anyway, or you can have your own discussions within there about like we didn't really get into like the silence symbol and what other symbols might be out there,
Hmm.
so
Or
go.
even the effects of listening to this book versus reading it, because the book does have just phenomenal images inside of it. The guy who is uh the artist, I can't think of the word for it, but the
The
illustrator.
illustrator.
Yeah, just phenomenal. Does a great job with depicting the complicated words that Brandon puts down.
For those who want, though, if you are going in audiobook, you can always just Google Rithmatist, and
Oh yeah.
a lot of those that are there. A lot of those are there online. You'll have to
Hmm.
piece together where they go on your own, but like the descriptions are there, and the different arithmetic circles and stuff are also there. So, yeah, feel free to check them out. Comment on YouTube about what you think about them. Otherwise, I'm going to end my final impressions with saying I would absolutely recommend this for those who want like a really fun, easy to read fantasy mystery combination. Uh, and like I said, I would recommend it to just about anybody who loves those genres. So why don't we go ahead and start closing out for the night there, Alan?
All right. All right. So let's see what Adam usually does here. Uh, so our poll is closed. We are going to be reading "Never Let Me Go" by, help me with this author, Kazu Ishihiro.
uh,
Ishi.
Kazuo Ishiguro.
Yes. Sorry so much for butchering that name. I'm looking forward to that book. And so please join us for the July 10th stream. We are also reading currently. Um, what book are we supposed to be reading right now? I haven't gotten to it. It is do 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 do. I should have had this.
I can't remember which one, but I know it's by Lisa C.
Yes, yes. It is load faster, load faster.
No, no dead air, no dead air.
Yeah, I know, right? Yeah. So of course my computer is failing me at the moment.
All right.
So
I actually believe I have it up here. It's Snowflower and the Secret Fan by Lisa C. That's C spelled SEE. Um, yeah,
yes.
so please join us for that one. It is one that was actually recommended by the mother of your co-host.
Yes, that is June 19th. I'll put it up on the screen
Oh,
here. Um, and you can always check it out on our website. Go to dmstable.com/the 800s, and you can see all of our past books that we've read. All of our videos are linked over there, and also what books we're reading next. And you can check out our Patreon, patreon.com/dmstable, for information on what books we're voting on. $2 to get in on the ground level, uh, and that is supporting our show and all of our outside shows like our podcasts and stuff like that. So your support is just it means a lot. So thank you to all of our patrons. If you want to check out more information on us, you can check us out on Twitter at DM's Table or Facebook at the DM's Table. We post there quite often, and we love to hear from you guys on what your thoughts are with the stream or the other things that we're doing. Um, so yeah, let's see here. Oh, also, don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Um, we are kind of doing a little bit of everything here when it comes to like nerdy stuff. We've got our book club here. We've got D&D oriented things over on our YouTube channel, so go check that out as well. And if you want in on a really great community, hit us up on Twitter or Facebook to get a invite to our Discord. It is a community that is kind of invite only. It is not a public community, and we have an absolute blast. We're talking about books we're currently reading outside of the 800s. We have really fun, nerdy chats going on. So come join us at on our Discord.
and coming up this month, May, was our Mental Health Awareness Month. So we are also going to be uh, sorry, I lost my place here. Okay, yeah. So we're also promoting Jasper's Game Day. They're a wonderful organization that promotes mental health awareness and helps raise money for mental health resources for those in need through tabletop gaming, including Pathfinder, D&D, and all sorts of other games. They're a wonderful organization with a great with really a fantastic mission statement. And if you want to donate or participate in any of their events, because they do have games that they put on with various different game masters and different themes, please go check them out. Again, this is an important one for me, so
Me too.
thank you all to anybody who did reach out to them or get involved with them. And anybody who does in the future, thank you from the past. Uh, coming up, though, uh, we do have a break coming up. We are going to be taking the June 5th week off this week, so we'll be coming back on the 19th. But the end of June will be the start of our Asian and Pacific Islander Author Month, and we will continue that on into July, which we will also be skipping a week because we didn't plan very well, and one of the weeks ends up being Fourth of July weekend. So what we'll be doing is we will be taking one extra week there, and then we'll have 3 weeks between that and the end of the month, where we will be trying to fit in some bigger books. So get ready for that, folks. Um,
That's our
and for now,
next vote, right? We're doing
uh,
big book vote this 2 weeks, right?
yeah, big book vote. So that one's all the way out in July now at this
Yeah.
point.
Yep.
Because we have both of our Asian Pacific Islander uh books. So yeah, if you have any big books, you probably have until Monday to get those suggestions. Well, end of Sunday, so that we
Yep.
can get the next vote posted by Monday. Um, and if you have any suggestions, please send them our way. Otherwise, thank you for your patronage and patience. It's been a pleasure so far, and I know things get busy in the summer months. It does for us too, obviously,
Hmm.
but we hope that you continue to read with us and just get around whenever you can. uh,
Yeah. Thank you guys so much. I love being on camera here and talking. So it was really nice to be able to talk about such a fantastic book. So um, I will see you guys behind the screen next time and get to reading. I can't wait for these books.
Bye, y'all.
See ya.